Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Athletics coverage of Deadline Day here at the end of January. January the 31st, 2022. What will the day have in store? We've got our reporters, of course, dedicated reporters that cover their clubs 365 days of the year, ready to speak to us in a host of shows throughout the day. We're going to be back at lunchtime, then around about 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then through the deadline at 11 o'clock today. Just to let you know what's coming up on this first show, which is coming to you live on Twitter, on Facebook and YouTube as well. Thank you very much for joining us on those various platforms. We're going to be speaking to Chris Waugh, our Newcastle reporter, very shortly indeed, about the Geordie trolley dash that has gone on in this January transfer window and what more there is to come before the 11 o'clock deadline. We'll also be joined by David Ornstein, who's going to be telling us about a whole host of transfers that may or may not happen today on this deadline day. Jay Harris as well is going to be joining us to talk about Christian Eriksen, that deal and news of that deal. You'll remember he broke about the Dane heading to Brentford, has now been confirmed by the Bees. So we will be speaking to him. I will also bring you the latest on Liverpool with James Pearce, Aston Villa. Greg Evans is going to be joining us. Andy Jones, our Burnley reporter, as well, is going to be telling us exactly what's going on at Turf Moor, because obviously we saw Chris Wood leave to Newcastle, and they are busy in the market hoping to get a couple of strikers in. Sam Lee as well. I suppose, you compare what's going on at Burnley to what's going on at the other end of the table at Manchester City, calmly, serenely sitting there thinking, we're miles clear at the top of the Premier League. Why do we need to do anything? Well, we will find out exactly if they are going to be doing anything at Manchester City in this update. Right, let's get stuck into it. Oh, actually, before I do, as you can see Chris pop up, he's the face that everyone's been waiting to see as far as Newcastle fans are concerned. As you can see at the bottom of your screen, fittingly in black and white, is a discount code for you for The Athletic on this deadline day. And it's a special one as well, 50% off for your new subscription. And all you need to do is go to theathletic.com/deadline day. And then you can join the Athletic family and follow our coverage throughout the day with our transfer blog, which is ongoing, but also the in-depth analysis that the Athletic offers on the Premier League and all European football, the EFL as well. So get stuck into that, and it'd be great to have you on board on this deadline day. Right, Chris, hello. Just tell me, first of all, before we get stuck into it, how are you? Because this is incredible what is going on at Newcastle, and I described it as a trolley dash. Am I being unfair from a relegation rival? Obviously, I cover Watford. It feels a bit like a trolley dash.
It is a trolley dash. I mean, this is like nothing I think that we've seen at many clubs before, because Newcastle had so much to do going into this January window. I've spoken to a few recruitment people at other clubs who've basically said the way they see what Newcastle are trying to do this window is almost unprecedented for a January window in such a short space of time. And given the quality of player they are looking to attract, they haven't necessarily been able to achieve them all, but the quality player they're trying to attract. And I mean, George Culkin, my colleague, has written a column for this morning, which sort of sums up how different deadline day feels for Newcastle United fans. This used to just be Monday under Mike Ashley. There would be very little business, if any. There might be the odd boring loan here and there, but no real strength in the side, whereas we expect Newcastle to do significant business today. And George has written that Newcastle have finally come to this demented deadline day party. It's something that they are trying to get involved in. And it's that what they bring in may not prove to be enough. We'll find out whether they have actually secured enough players and enough strong players to be able to survive. But even the mere fact that they are trying to do it feels so different. And that's why Newcastle fans feel energized going into today.
Okay, we'll come on to the ones that are sort of effectively done and in through the door in a moment's time. But what are we expecting? I mean, that's quite a question, because it could sort of spiral out of control in a fun way. But what are you actually expecting to happen today, and what's sort of moving as we speak at 8:30 this morning?
I mean, my phone is just buzzing at the minute. Loads of different people with loads of different sort of things going on because Newcastle are casting the net far and wide. I've been told to not rule anything out, but really they're looking at ideally to complete 3 deals. One of those is Dan Burn from Brighton and Hove Albion. They've agreed a guaranteed fee of £13 million. Not all of it's up front, but some of it will come through. So that is the centre-back that Eddie Howe has desperately wanted all window, the left-sided centre-back, Premier League experience, Newcastle fan as a youngster. So he is going to... That should be completed today. Ideally, Howe would like a second centre-back, but I think that's looking unlikely at this stage. Matt Targett at Aston Villa, the left-back, since Luca Digne's gone in there, he may be allowed to go out on loan. Newcastle are exploring that possibility. As of last night, nothing was necessarily imminent on it, but they are pushing to see whether that can happen before the deadline. And then they also want a striker. Now, there are reports this morning that Hugo Ekitike at Reims, who Newcastle have looked at all window and have walked away to an extent from negotiations a few weeks ago when they were quoted at what they saw to be an astronomical fee from the interest has never quite gone away. And with domestic targets like Eddie Nketiah looking like they're unattainable, they seem to have gone back around the table and are seeing whether they can bring in him as a young forward. So they're the areas to focus on today. But equally, I wouldn't rule anything else out. I've had a few midfielder names put to me already in a few other positions. So Newcastle are going to be busy, and that's just on incomings because they also have to get a lot of players out because they already have a full 25-man squad.
I mean, obviously, Newcastle have been linked with a whole host of players, and it has been not laughable, but it has been entertaining at the very least to see how many names precisely, Newcastle have been linked with. But we've seen, the likes of, James Tarkowski as another centre back option. I mean, there's a whole host of them. Jesse Lingard as well. Even Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was linked at one stage in terms of that striker position. Are we expecting one that you think at the moment, right, it's not on the radar, but it has been on the radar that could resurface today?
I do think that there's that possibility. I know from a lot of talks that Newcastle had for certain players, it got to a stage where it was almost a deadlock, and Newcastle thought, we'll step away and come back towards the end of the window and see whether the terms on offer can be reduced and whether a compromise can be reached. I mean, Jesse Lingard, David Ornstein, our colleague, has reported this morning that he will go and see Ralph Rangnick and try and find a way to be able to leave Manchester United. And Jesse Lingard is someone Newcastle United would like. That I think hope over the last couple of days has really diminished on that, and they're not sure it's necessarily possible, but they will, if it does become available. He is someone that definitely think could bring in Premier League experience. But just other names sort of around Europe, some of the bigger players Newcastle have been linked to, not the likes of Ousmane Dembele, but some very good players, the likes of Juventus and other clubs. I could see Newcastle, if the terms come down, thinking, if we can do this deal, we will now do it. So I expect the unexpected today is what I'm trying to say. I think that there is the chance there could be something left field, but equally, in order for them to do that, they're either going to have to move some more players on, or they're going to have to just decide that they're going to leave some players out of their 25-man squad.
In terms of, I mean, we were sat alongside each other covering the Newcastle-Watford game for The Athletic a few weeks ago now, and we watched the two sides struggling. Let's be brutally honest, not playing particularly good football. But the signings that Watford have brought in, 3 signings, they've brought in 1 since. We'll talk about Watford maybe a little bit later on in the show, but they shouldn't be too busy today. But we're watching 2 sides. One needed improvement, and that was Newcastle. Do you think the players that have been brought in, do you think they are the ones that will plug the gaps and will steadily pull Newcastle away from the relegation zone?
Well, I think no matter what Newcastle would have done in this window, if they hadn't signed a centre-back, there would have been a degree of failure about it, because that was the priority long before the window opened. In fact, it's been for years, really. They wanted a left-sided centre-back. Dan Burn wasn't the first choice, but given that he comes from Brighton with the Graham Potter way of playing, he's schooled in that way of playing. He can play a few different positions, left centre-back, left back, left wing-back. He's experienced in the Premier League. He can help Eddie Howe try and instill this style that he wants, to play it out from the back, to have someone who's more comfortable in possession. So I think he will make a big difference. I also think that in midfield, bringing in Bruno Guimaraes, it's a gamble in one sense in terms of can he do it immediately because he's come from the French league. But what Newcastle have lacked is someone who can retain possession in difficult situations, can help them get higher up the pitch. And in theory, that's exactly what he's going to bring. It's a position, again, that is needed to be strengthened for a long, long time. So add to that Kieran Trippier, who I think is an excellent sign in many ways, brings leadership, a quality right back at England International. Chris Wood, not the sexiest name out there, but Newcastle desperately needed a Premier League experienced centre forward. If they can then add someone like Ekitike plus Matt Targett, I think that would be business that you'd look at Newcastle at the end of the window and you'd say they are significantly stronger than they started it, which is exactly what they needed to do this month.
Okay, last question, just in case Newcastle fans have joined in on this live stream on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and they missed the bit at the beginning. What sort of, like, in terms of your sort of domino effect of today, which dominoes are fittingly black and white as well, it's perfect. How's it all going to sort of, if in the ideal world, to see you sipping a deep glass of red wine at 11 o'clock and everything's gone to plan, how does it work out in terms of the order of things happening today, if there are no sort of random surprises?
No random surprises then. I think Dan Burn should get done, so Newcastle should have their centre-back there. I think Matt Targett has a decent chance of happening, so there's another left-back. And then also someone like Hugo Ekitike, I think that there is a chance that they will bring in a forward like that. Jesse Lingard, add on top of that, if they could get all four of them, that would be an absolutely fantastic deadline day for Newcastle United. And that's just with incomings. That's not including all the potential outgoings. Kieran Clark could go, Freddie Woodman could go to Bournemouth. Jeff Hendrick could go out. I'm expecting Elliot Anderson, the young midfielder, to finally go out on loan. There's various other players who have a chance of going. If they sign a forward, Dwight Gale could head out on loan, and a lot of Championship clubs, I'm sure, would snap him up. So yes, it's going to be very, very busy.
Brilliant. Chris, thank you very much indeed. We will, of course, unfortunately, if you didn't know this already, Chris, you are going to be back on pretty much every show because Newcastle are top of the lot. Something will have happened. Something random will happen. So we will see you on the next show around lunchtime. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the next few hours of Supermarket Sweep. Right, let's kick on. And we're going to get updates on these shows from our reporters live. Also, reports that they've sent in to us when they can, when things are happening at their clubs. So let's check in now with what's going on at Liverpool, both ins and outs, and the priorities as far as our dedicated reporter, James Pearce, is concerned. Let's hear from him now.
For Liverpool, on transfer deadline day, it's all about, can they agree a deal with Fulham for the transfer of talented youngster Fabio Carvalho? We know the two clubs have been in discussions. Liverpool prepared to pay the Championship promotion chasers £5 million and loan him back to Craven Cottage for the rest of this season. Remains to be seen whether that is enough. Of course, Carvalho has already rejected the offer of a new deal at Fulham and is out of contract this summer. In terms of outgoings at Liverpool, remains to be seen whether suitable offers are received for fringe players like Nat Phillips, Takumi Minamino and Divock Origi. So plenty to keep an eye on over the course of today with The Athletic.
Thank you very much indeed, James. Yeah, James is going to be keeping us in touch with exactly what's going on at Liverpool. Just a reminder of what's to come on this show. David Ornstein is going to be joining us round about 9 o'clock. He's going to be popping up and speaking to us live. But let's check in with Jay Harris on a deal that has already happened on this deadline day. Now, Jay, hat tip to you for breaking the news regarding Christian Eriksen and his proposed move at that point to Brentford. Well, it has finally come off. You can give us the details.
No, thank you, Adam, and good morning and best of luck to us all on another infamous deadline day. Really, it's kind of like the feel-good story of the transfer window. And even from my perspective, 2 weeks ago, as you kind of mentioned, we reported that Brentford had put in an offer for Christian Eriksen, but it still seemed like there was such a long way to go at that moment in time. And it's taken a little bit of time to get over the line. And I think that's really understandable with Christian's medical history after, that horrific incident that happened at Euro 2020. But thankfully, over the last few days, Brentford have, done some very extensive medical checks on Christian. Before he's allowed to play in the Premier League, he had to be cleared and assessed by a sports cardiologist. So it seems if that's been done, the FA needed to approve the deal and the Premier League needed to ratify it as well. And, Brentford have announced at 8 o'clock this morning, so just about 45 minutes ago, that the deal's officially gone through. The only thing is that Eriksen's not in the country at the moment. So Brentford fans shouldn't expect him to play in the FA Cup at the weekend. I still think it's going to be a couple weeks, maybe 3-4, until we see him actually on the pitch again. But it's just fantastic that he's taken another step closer to what will be a sensational comeback.
Yeah, just give us a little bit of background as well to how this has actually kicked on and developed, because I know you've been writing on it ever since the story broke for The Athletic. What's the sort of the timeline of how this deal has come about?
I think there are two key factors in this whole process. So firstly, Brentford started considering it internally after Eriksen was forced to leave Inter. So as a little bit of background, in Italy, if a player is fitted with some sort of heart device, they're not allowed to play competitively at any level, whether that's amateur or professionally. As I've just kind of mentioned, the rules in England are a little bit different. So Brentford started having internal discussions after Eriksen left Inter Milan about whether this was feasible or not. And like I said, I think the two key factors here are location, because Brentford are a Premier League club, and more importantly, they're a London-based Premier League club. But maybe an even bigger pull is the fact that he's worked with Thomas Frank before. Thomas Frank, obviously Brentford's head coach, he used to be in charge of Denmark's under-17s team, and he worked with Christian Eriksen during that period of time. And so I think there's, the ability for Eriksen to go into an environment that's going to be very comfortable and very familiar for him. And I think he really needs that when you consider, of course, the wider context around this return. And he's also got so many international teammates at Brentford: Christian Norgard, Matthias Zanker-Jorgensen, Jonas Lørsel, Matthias Jensen. So he's just, as I've just mentioned, going into an environment where he's going to feel very secure, very protected. And, not to rub salt in the wounds after the Watford-Newcastle segment, but Brentford are in a better position in the league at the moment. Obviously, there's still a long way to go, but they've got that little buffer to the relegation zone. And I think that's probably a really good thing that Eriksen's not going into an environment and being expected to be a game changer. This is a deal that could suit everybody, but it's not right. Eriksen's going to save our season. And I think that's really important as well.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit, because obviously there is the human element to this, and everyone is hugely delighted that he is going to be back playing football, just as the base level. That is the most important thing. But there has to be some technical value to Brentford having a player like that. And yes, he might be someone that can be a cherry on the cake rather than someone who's going to completely change how Brentford are going to play. But what do you think he will add? Who do you think within that dressing room will be thinking, hang on a minute, I've got big competition now. Where does he fit in?
I should quickly add, you've rightly said that everybody is delighted about it, but there are still a lot of people who are, quite rightly concerned about Christian coming back. And Fabrice Mwamba's been very open on the topic. But Brentford's director of football, Phil Giles, in the official statement that confirmed Eriksen's signing, said, in order to respect Christian's medical confidentiality, we won't be going into any details, but Brentford fans can rest assured that we have undertaken significant due diligence to ensure that Christian is in the best possible shape to return to competitive football again. So I should probably start by saying that. And yeah, Eriksen can be the cherry on the cake to go back to him actually playing on the field. Ivan Toney's only scored 6 goals in the Premier League this season. I think people were expecting a lot more from him. 2 of those goals have been penalties, and 2 of those goals have come in the last 2 games. So there's been an extended period of time this season where he's not got into the box for whatever reason. I think Brentford and Thomas Frank have been very open about the fact that they've not created that many chances from open play. I think they've only created, I think they're the 5th or 6th worst team in the division for creating chances from open play. So why not go out and sign one of the best playmakers in Premier League history? But in terms of players that's going to impact in the squad, Brentford like to play with 3 central midfielders. I fully expect Vitaly Janot will keep his position, as will Christian Norgard. So it's that third role, which is normally rotated between Shandon Baptiste and Matthias Jensen, that I think Eriksen will probably take over. And then he can play a little bit more advanced. He'll play right behind Mbeumo and Ivan Toney. And I think Brentford fans are quite excited about that prospect of him supplying them and hopefully, not getting dragged into a relegation battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Just finally, for Brentford fans that are obviously tuning in, and for football fans that are tuning in to find out mainly about Christian Eriksen rather than where he's actually going to be going, and it might be the first time people around the world that they've actually heard of Brentford. Let's be brutally honest, not in a bad way, but it's been quite a rise for Brentford. In terms of the transfer window, aside from Eriksen, as a whole for Brentford, how would you assess it? And is there anything else that might be bubbling, between now and 11 o'clock?
It's hard to assess in one way how to really rate Brentford's transfer window, because you have to admire and respect the fact that an opportunity came up to sign Christian Eriksen and they saw it through to the end and have done it. And I've no doubt that there would have been other teams in for Eriksen who maybe have a bigger profile, as you've alluded to. You know, Brentford are still such a small club that are punching above their weight. It's still their first season in the Premier League, first season in the top flight in 74 years. And Thomas Frank has openly admitted, you know, if it wasn't for Eriksen's situation, there's not a chance that he comes to Brentford. But for the second transfer in a window in a row, the club's priority was to get wing-back cover at right wing-back and left wing-back. And it looks like that's not going to happen. If Rico Henry gets injured, they're in a really tricky spot. They have no natural left-back cover. They've let Dominic Thompson go on loan to Ipswich. You know, Sergi Canos, who is a winger really, an attacking midfielder really, plays right wing-back. Or it's Mads Roerslev, who's talented but still inexperienced. They tried to sign Anderson from Gremio shortly after the Brazilian top flight season ended in December. That deal was probably 90% done. I think personal terms have been agreed. And then at the last minute, Anderson decided to go to Monaco. So I think there's a lot of frustration from some Brentford fans that one area of the squad that's really needed addressing for 2 transfer windows now hasn't been dealt with. And it doesn't look as if they're going to get anything through today. They've obviously had bids rejected in the last week for Brennan Johnson and Keane Lewis-Potter. And it looks like the Brennan Johnson deal is basically dead in the water. Nottingham Forest wanted 18, 19, 20 million pounds for a player who has never played in the top flight before. He was in League One last season, and that would have smashed Brentford's transfer records. I think they're very reluctant to do it. I've no doubt Brentford might pull a rabbit out of the hat, but I think we're going to have to see how the day pans out, whether that happens or not. But I think the biggest takeaway is that it doesn't look like the wing-back cover that they desperately need will be coming in.
Okay, Jay, thank you very much indeed. We'll check in with you a little bit later on, I'm sure, on one of our next shows on The Athletic, coming to you live on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. Jay, thanks very much indeed. Just a reminder for everyone watching at home around the world, if you want to join in with The Athletic, there is a discount code available today on this deadline day, and you can get 50% off a new subscription. Just go to theathletic.com/deadline day, as you can see at the bottom of your screen. Now, let's quickly just check in with Greg Evans, who follows Aston Villa for us with his eagle eye about exactly what's going in. I mean, we spoke to Chris Waugh about Newcastle. We know that potentially there is one heading out. What more, Greg Evans?
Good morning, Villa fans. So it's gearing up to be another busy day at your club. Defensive midfield is an area that Villa would like to strengthen. Whether they get a player in today or decide to recruit in the next transfer window next season remains to be seen. A couple of targets that we know about already at Brighton's Yves Bissouma, Marseille's Boubacar Kamara, who's been scouted in recent weeks, and of course Glenn Kamara at Rangers, who Steven Gerrard knows well. A couple of players that could be leaving. Trezeguet is heading out on loan to Turkey at Başakşehir. Matt Targett has generated some interest from Newcastle in recent days. Whether they come back in with a bid for him remains to be seen in these closing hours of the window. And Kane Kessler, the right back who was recalled from his loan spell at Swindon, will be leaving today for either a Championship or League One club. We'll update you throughout the day, but expect to be another busy one at Villa.
Greg, thank you very much indeed. I just wanted to point you in the direction of an article that has dropped this morning. It is traditionally on The Athletic, David Ornstein, that writes a Monday column rounding up a whole host of news, but obviously it's dominated by transfer news during the January transfer window, the summer transfer window as well. And today's one is no different in that regard. Who is moving, who is staying, David Ornstein's transfer deadline day lowdown. We will be talking to David Ornstein a little bit later on in this show, probably just after 9 o'clock, and we'll be able to dig into some of the stories on that. But there is plenty more going on The Athletic in terms of breaking news and also deeper articles on the players that are moving around. Let's not forget there's managers moving around as well. We saw Roy Hodgson, for example, coming in at Watford, Frank Lampard going in at Everton as well. Let's bring in Amitai Winehouse, who is our news editor here at The Athletic. Amitai, very good morning to you. Just in terms of what you're keeping your eagle eye on at the moment, what is it? And just how can people follow the news over the course of today on The Athletic?
Morning, Adam. So we've got plenty going on this morning. As you said, I think David Ornstein and the Writers' Roundup is the best place to start for the day. There's plenty of interesting stuff in there. We also have an ongoing live blog, which has the latest news. In terms of what we're keeping our eye on, I just had a chat with the desk before I came over to do this show. There's plenty going on. There's potentially a move for Jesse Lingard still, which is something that seemed, very, very unlikely last week. There's also Newcastle potentially making further moves. Obviously, as you said there, Everton are expected to confirm Frank Lampard as their new manager at some point today. We've also got Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang going to Barcelona potentially, which is likely to happen, but there could always be a stumbling block with that. Just plenty. Fabio Carvalho is probably going to become a Liverpool player today, and plenty more.
And just in terms of, I've worked in newsrooms, throughout the year, and it just sort of, the dynamic completely changes on deadline day. I know we it's only 9 o'clock and it's going to be a late night beyond 11 o'clock, but there is that extra buzz to everything on a deadline day, isn't there?
Well, yeah, definitely. We've got Sky Sports News camera in the office today, which in itself feels like a sort of big moment. We've got the reporters coming in. The place is going to be busy. It's going to be rammed. I got in at 7 a.m. today, which is very unlikely for me. It's just one of those days where sort of everything kicks off a little bit more. I think, it's the sort of day you look forward to as a reporter, right? It's the sort of day you look forward to as an editor. I personally live for transfer news. I'm really excited to see who ends up where at the end of the day. It's the sort of day that I look forward to all month, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, and I know over the years, sometimes it has sort of, people have gone, oh, nothing ever happens. Oh, it's, just some no mark turning up in a car park and nothing's happening. This one does feel different. Obviously, Newcastle have added a big spark to the whole thing, but there are plenty of other big moves. And often, if business isn't done, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing, because you've managed to keep hold of a player that is vital to your cause. Now, a cause that is very, very close to your heart is Leeds United, of course. And I'll get your thoughts on it in a moment. But obviously, Leeds fans that are watching this live on YouTube, Twitter, on Facebook will be hanging on the every word of Mr. Phil Hay. Let's just check in with him, and then I'll get your take on what's happening at Leeds, Amitai. I think we can hear from Phil. I think we can. If we can't, it's no big deal. Let's speak to Amitai first then. Let's speak to Amitai about, I suppose that the situation at Leeds it's been a difficult season already, been unexpectedly difficult with injuries and things like that. But there is also worries about big players maybe being tempted away on this deadline day, which would be, I don't want to be too sort of melodramatic about it, but it would be catastrophic if we're talking about the names that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably what we're going to hit from Phil when we do get to see that video. But in David Ornstein's column this morning, there was quite a sort of positive update with regards to that, because over the weekend, Rafinha and Calvin Phillips were linked with moves to West Ham and interest from both clubs. In David Ornstein's piece, Phil Hay actually reported that West Ham made a bid for Calvin Phillips a fortnight ago, but Leeds insisted there was no formal offer. They just sort of inquired, essentially. But Leeds essentially said, no, we're not letting him go this window. And the same is the case for Rafinha, who obviously has shone in particular this season, but was excellent for Leeds last season. I think, as you sort of said, if you talk about losing either of those players, I think in particular Rafinha, because Phillips has been injured for the last month and is, I think, not anticipated to be back until definitely the sort of latter end of February, potentially not even March. I think in particular Rafinha leaving would have been like a devastating sort of blow to a bid to stay in the Championship, in the Premier League even. I think what is quite crucial is that the window has been generally a bit disappointing as far as Leeds are concerned. The aim, I think, of most fans would have been to bring in a midfielder of some sort. It was the clear gap in the squad. And while Leeds moved for Brendan Aronson, the Salzburg midfielder, that was batted away, and Leeds don't look likely to sign anyone unless Crescencio Somerville leaves, one of the sort of younger backup wingers. So yeah, I think if you sort of combine that with potentially one of the star names leaving, it would have been a particularly bad window for a club that's not necessarily had the best season.
Okay, let's quickly check in with Phil. I'll get some closing thoughts from you in a moment's time. Phil Hay, the man on Leeds. Let's hear from him.
It's looking like a quiet end to the window for Leeds United. The only bit of note from them in January has been a £20 million offer for Brendan Aronson, attacking midfielder at RB Salzburg. But Salzburg have knocked that offer back. They don't want to sell him in this window, and Leeds will revisit that one when the summer comes around. He is a long-term target who they'll go after again. The one thing that might change on deadline day, or the one thing that might influence some last-minute movement, is the future of Crescencio Somerville, the under-23s winger who's been on the fringes of Bielsa's squad all season. Somerville has interest in him from Hamburg in Germany, and also from at least one club in Holland. And if he was to go, Leeds would look to recruit in a wide area to fill the gap left by him. But as of late on Sunday, it wasn't looking likely that he would go. It seems that the chances are he will remain with the squad. And if that's the case, I think Leeds will reach the deadline at 11 p.m. Without bringing in any new players.
So that is Phil Hay on Leeds. Remember, you can follow him on The Athletic, our dedicated Leeds reporter. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about players' futures, but Marcelo Bielsa's future has also been a little bit sort of uncertain. And everyone, whenever you speak to anyone about Leeds United and anyone about Marcelo Bielsa, people go, you know what, he could just leave. He could just leave. He's done it in the past. He might just not fancy it anymore and just walk off. Is that your fear, or do you think that, having seen some of the emotional reactions to goals that have been scored, that he's still fully invested, and we don't need to worry about where he's going to be going until the end of his contract this summer?
I think I really hate to say anything particularly confidently, because it is Bielsa, and as you say, this has happened, and I don't want to sort of suggest I've got a bad track record for these things. I don't know that. Phil Hay has a terrible track record for these things, but I'll put it this way: I personally wouldn't be that scared about that, because I feel like with Bielsa, the deal with him is that as long as you do exactly what you're telling him you're going to do, and don't sort of almost lie to him to a degree, he just sticks around until the end of a contract. I think the interesting conversation with Bielsa is now, what do Leeds United do in the summer, and what the sort of next stages of his managerial career are. It's one that I sort of go back and forth on, and I think I've come to the conclusion that, as far as I'm concerned with Bielsa, I think until he wants to walk away from Leeds United, he's got every right to stay in the dugout. And I think that Leeds have a potentially interesting decision to make themselves. I think that he's actually been very unfortunate this season, in that I think while he himself would profess to be very happy with the transfer business, I think Leeds as an institution maybe should have insisted on building the squad out slightly more in the summer. And I think that also should have been the case this window in particular. I would be really interested to see Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds United in a third season in the Premier League, where the board have gone, right, we're going to sign players that suit your system, but we're going to build the squad out slightly, and we're going to provide you with a bit more talent, because there is a limit to what he can do with the players he got in the first place, right? I think that's the conversation for the summer. And on the initial question, I would hazard that, assuming someone at Leeds doesn't decide to do something a bit drastic for me anyway, for no reason, I think definitely till the end of the season, I think the conversation then is what really becomes interesting.
But it's an interesting one with Bielsa, isn't it? That, even when we saw throughout games being called off due to COVID-19 and things like that, he almost likes that siege mentality atmosphere. So he's not one to go, yeah, I want X amount, I want to do this, I want to do that. That's part of his thing, isn't it? To have a small I don't know what the right word is, just sort of almost strained squad, because that brings out his identity, the football that he wants to be playing. It's almost, it's us all together, a band of brothers. So I don't know how the next step looks for Leeds. It's a tricky one, but I suppose heartening is hearing Rafinha, and obviously, things may change between now and 11 o'clock, but almost getting the sense that he knows he owes it to Leeds. He's a man of honour. He wants to stay. That must be heartening, and it's reflective of a together dressing room, even though it has been a tough season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've sort of hinted at it there. I feel like the squad at Leeds and sort of Bielsa's philosophy sort of match each other in that I feel there's a sense of like, you almost have to suffer to succeed in football, is what Bielsa. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, but I feel like that's what Bielsa believes, and I think most Leeds fans would agree that it's sort of about suffering, and occasionally it's quite nice. And I think that does foster that spirit. And as you say, having a small squad means that if you're Rafinha, you're going to play every week. And if you're Calvin Phillips and you fit, you're going to play every week, because as good as Lewis Bate is, for example, for the under-23s, he is a kid who is just making his first steps in professional football. So I think 100%, and it is heartening, and it's the sort of thing I always feel like when it comes to Bielsa at Leeds. You can lose a few games, and you can lose a few games badly, and you can play against Arsenal with all your best players missing and no attempt to postpone it. But at the end of the day, when you beat West Ham away, for example, you feel like not only is it a victory on the football pitch, but it's a bit of a moral victory, because you've done everything correctly. Like, all of the things that a football club should do, Leeds United currently do as a footballing institution. Like, behind the scenes, it might be whatever it is, but what Leeds United do on the pitch is exactly what every football fan in the world probably would want their football club to do. So it's one of those where it's like, there is like fundamental sort of flaws to it, but they're flaws that you kind of look past because you sort of almost part of this weird moral crusade to do the right thing in football, which is quite a nice thing to be associated with, weirdly enough. So yeah, and then as you say with Rafinha, I feel like, yeah, he'll buy into it for the next 6 months or for the next 18 months or whatever it might be, but at least you've had that little bit of joy as part of this larger, sort of moral victory, basically. The joy of seeing this great player for another 6 months. That's all it is, basically.
Okay, Amitai, thank you very much indeed. Let's not get too carried away. This is Leeds United we're talking about. You love Leeds. You really love Leeds. Not many other fans of anyone else really love Leeds. Let's be brutally honest. It is Leeds United. Right. Amitai, thank you very much indeed. We will check in with you a little bit later on. Get back to the transfer tracker and all that in the newsroom. Thank you very much. Just a quick reminder, as you can see there on your screen, 50% off a new subscription for The Athletic by going to theathletic.com/deadline day. We're going to have reports from Manchester City coming up. Also Burnley as well. They're going to be busy. Let's get David Ornstein in on the show. Good morning to you, David. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Adam. Yourself? I actually made it in here, unlike you.
Yes, I know. Well, I thought I'd sort of stagger my movements for today in a tactical way. I think that's probably all I can say.
This is a diplomatic way of explaining yourself, young man.
Anyway, right. Let's dig into what's going on. And I was speaking a little bit earlier on about the article that's dropped this morning, your column, which is dominated by the big transfer moves today. Let's start with Jesse Lingard, if we can, and what is likely to happen with him today, as far as you understand it, as we speak. In a sort of
in a bit of a tangle here, as is Jesse Lingard. No, so Jesse Lingard will be at Carrington today, Manchester United's training ground. He is going to be speaking to the manager, Ralph Rangnick. They spoke at Carrington yesterday, with Lingard expressing his desire to be let go to Newcastle on loan until the end of the season when his contract expires. Rangnick is obviously sympathetic. He's already granted him permission to go. He's already given his blessing, but the Manchester United board have overruled it so far and said that no, he's not going unless we have these criteria met, which is a £2.5 million loan fee and a £12 million bonus, you could call it, if Newcastle are to stay in the Premier League. Newcastle are unwilling to pay that. That seemed to collapse the deal, but behind the scenes, there was still some level of communication, to the extent where Newcastle are now under the impression that the fee could be a bit lower than what was previously demanded. And that's why Lingard sort of has gone back and pushed again. He doesn't feel he's going to get the opportunities to play, even though Donny van der Beek is leaving for Everton and Anthony Martial has gone to Sevilla. He wasn't happy in the first half of the season, and he wants to make the move, which wasn't his initial plan. As we revealed on The Athletic, his intention was to stay at Manchester United until the summer and then leave as a free agent. But now he wants to get back playing. It's a World Cup year. He wants to get back into Gareth Southgate's thinking. And so he will speak to Ralph Rangnick at Carrington today. He will make one last push and plea to be let go, for Rangnick to go to John Murtough, the football director, to Darren Fletcher, the technical director, lobby Richard Arnold, the chief executive newly installed, to push Joel Glazer from the ownership to say, let him go. Jesse Lingard appreciates and respects Manchester United's desire to recoup some money for him. He's been with them since the age of 7. They stand to lose him for nothing otherwise. So he does want them to benefit, and he wants to keep it civil by the sounds of it. It's getting very late in the day now, and especially with the Mason Greenwood situation, Manchester United are going to be lower on numbers, and that could put the final nail in Jesse Lingard's hopes of leaving. But we'll see. It's something that is live, Adam, and it could happen.
In terms of, if we track back, went off to West Ham, proved how much of a player he could be. The expectation was go back to Manchester United. That's always been the overarching plan, to get back playing for United and showing how good he can be. Why is it not worked out? Why is he not able to show that he is good enough to be playing in that Manchester United side? I know it's complicated, but it doesn't seem something's not quite fitting together in the Jesse Lingard story at the moment.
Yeah, that's the £12 million question, I guess, isn't it? Or 14.5 if my calculations are correct. And I don't have an answer, and I don't think Jesse Lingard does either. He did so well at West Ham, but when he returned and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had given him some assurances about game time, what wasn't talked about so much at that point was that the talks over a new contract were going nowhere. And there is a suspicion in some quarters that Manchester United have shown less willingness to play ball with his desire to leave on loan than they did on Anthony Martial and Donny van der Beek, because they're under contract for longer. Jesse Lingard is a homegrown player who they expect, whether it's right or wrong, to sign a new deal and commit his future to his boyhood club. They told me in the past that they wanted him to be a part of Manchester United in the short, medium, long term, even post-career. They want to make sure their alumni stay as part of the club in one form or another. And if it's the case that they are showing more resistance because he's not played ball with them, then that's obviously not such a pretty explanation for this all. But in terms of not getting the game time, I think, he's a quality player, but the managers, for some reason, have judged others to have been more worthy of starting places. Personally, I think he should have gone to the Euros with England. So it was disappointment for him on that Gareth Southgate didn't quite give him the nod. What he did at West Ham in the second half of last season showed he's got abilities that no other English player has. And he's a top threat. But it's whether, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and now Ralph Rangnick, I don't think they're being instructed not to play him. I hope not. But clearly they feel others are higher in the pecking order. And whether that's partly because they think they can take for granted homegrown talents, I don't know. But it does feel to me, as an outsider, that it would be in the best interests of everybody that this deal goes through on deadline day. Manchester United might disagree with that, but there's a very good chance that if he stays, he's not going to be happy. And so they've got an unhappy player in the camp for 6 months and then he leaves for free anyway. I think their hope, if he stays, is that he will not just make up the numbers, which is crucial, especially what we've seen the COVID situation, but he actually steels himself and rallies his, his ability and his mentality to prove himself in, not that he feels he needs to prove himself, but just to show the world in the final 4 months of the season, in the Premier League, in the Champions League, that United have a top player on their hands who is about to become free in the summer, and a message is sent to the biggest clubs in the world that you can come and get me if you want. So I just want to see him playing, Adam. And I think either way, the outcome of today must be that he plays for the rest of the season, whether that's at Manchester United or elsewhere.
Two other players that I wanted to ask you about, because I'm conscious of time and I know that your phone is going to be fire at the moment. Right, quickly on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to Barcelona, is that all but certain to happen, or is it still on shaky ground?
Well, yesterday when we broke the news that Arsenal were close to an agreement with Barcelona, it was being described to me as 50-50 because of this issue on the wages. That needs to be resolved, how much Barcelona can cover. And that's a key problem in this situation. But I think there's optimism, not like overconfidence, that this will get done. It's being worked on as we speak. And I suspect it will, because the situation between him and Arteta doesn't seem sustainable. They either patch up their differences, kiss and make up, which I think is probably quite unlikely because there's so much water under that bridge now, or he goes. As things stand, I think he probably goes, but they need to get that deal right. And
Dele Alli, what's happening with him?
Yeah, Dele Alli has some interest now, which hasn't been the case throughout the window. I'm told, and I've revealed in the Monday column, that Valencia are looking into a possible move for him on loan before the window shuts. Their financial situation is extremely complicated. So some people have said to me this morning, there's just no chance of that happening. But they're considering it. There is some Premier League interest too. It's going to go down to the wire, and it can go down to the wire because it's a very straightforward loan that can be done quickly. Get your deal sheet in. Someone take not a gamble on him, because we've seen what he can do, but he's lost his way and nobody's gone for him so far. So that's going to be one of the latest deals. And again, I can't say with certainty that it will get done, but keep an eye on it.
And one, in a sentence, how much of I suppose a fun spanner in the works has Newcastle's money and wealth added to this transfer window? And what have you heard from people on the beat about how people are dealing with interest in a player from Newcastle? They can see them coming, can't they?
That's the Newcastle tax that has been quite well documented, and it's true. Clubs are up in their asking price. Newcastle have had to swallow that, and they've done it in good grace. They've cracked on. They've got the likes of Amanda Staveley from the ownership, her husband Murdad. There's Steve Nixon, head of recruitment, Eddie Howe, his nephew Andy Howe, Nick Hammond on a consultancy basis. Lots of people working on this. It's not been easy, but I think they've done some pretty good work. Kieran Trippier, Bruno Guimaraes, Chris Wood, Ekatike seems like he'll be coming, maybe one or two more before the deadline. So it's been a tough window. It will continue to be tough for Newcastle with people out to knock them off this new perch, but it's the nature of the beast and they'll get on with it.
David, thank you very much indeed. I'll let you crack on, and we'll have plenty more from David throughout the day on our regular shows here on The Athletic, live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube as well. I wanted to just quickly wrap up this show by getting the take of Sam Lee, who is our Manchester City reporter. We'll have a little bit of Burnley in a moment as well too. So let's just quickly check in with Sam Lee. Is anything of note happening at Manchester City?
Manchester City don't generally do a lot on transfer deadline day, especially in the winter, and that's going to be the case this time around as well. City fans can look forward at some point to the announcement of the signing of Julian Alvarez from River Plate, but he's going to stay in Argentina for the next 6 months at least, so there's no real rush on that one. There's a Hungarian teenager, Zalan Vanksa, who's going to sign as well, but he's actually signing for City's sister club, Lommel, not City at all. So yeah, it's going to be a quiet day, and don't expect too much before the transfer curtain closes.
Very good. Thank you very much, Sam. So from the top of the league, we will end this update from the Athletic, heading back down to the bottom of the league to Burnley, who are trying to get business done on this deadline day to try and dig them out of the hole at the bottom of the league. Let's check in with Andy Jones.
Burnley hoping for a busy end to the window, but of course that is not a guarantee. What is pretty much a guarantee, though, is the expected announcement of their first sign of the window. Wolfsburg's Wout Weghorst comes in as a striker to replace the outgoing Chris Wood, who left earlier this month for Newcastle. That was very quickly became the main priority for Burnley, so they'll be delighted to get that done for an initial £12 million plus potential add-ons. When they came into the window, central midfield and wide midfield were the two key priorities that they had initially focused on. Mislav Orsic was thought to be the wide midfielder, but a deal with Dinamo Zagreb has broken down in the last few days. There's a surprise at Burnley, who thought they were very close, if not pretty much there with it. But they're continuing to look in the market and seeing what's available to see if they can add new faces to help Sean Dyche in the second half of the season relegation fight.
So that is Andy Jones, our dedicated reporter at Burnley. And if you're not familiar with The Athletic and you're checking in with us for the first time, we have dedicated reporters for every team in the Premier League. Also, the big guns in the EFL as well. European football, we've got dedicated reporters in Spain, in Italy, in Germany as well. We're also covering the Africa Cup of Nations. Let's not forget about that, and a subplot that has added sort of an extra complication to this January transfer window. And we will be keeping you posted with exactly what's going on throughout the day here on The Athletic, live on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. And if you want to join in, you want to read some of the longer articles that we have, the in-depth analysis, the interviews, the features that we have put out over the last 24 hours, but all the way since we began here in the UK as well. You can check in by going to theathletic.com/deadline day. And as you can see right there in black and white, you get 50% off your annual subscription. We will be back at 1 o'clock from the Athletic HQ, and then we'll have further shows at 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and building up to the deadline at 10:30. It's an 11 o'clock deadline this evening, and we will be with you throughout right here on The Athletic. Thank you very much for joining in on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and we will see you again around lunchtime.